You're listening to DecayMag, Bondage and Circuitry.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Ken Artuz, founder for DecayMag. You're listening to DecayMag, Bondage in Circuitry. This is episode 1. Well, technically it is not episode 1. Bondage in Circuitry was another podcast that we had in the works, but unfortunately, tinkering with this plan of hosting a music-filled podcast on Mixcloud didn't prove to have great results. Mixcloud, you can only put your mixes and other people's music. It's very difficult to share it on YouTube and Facebook, given that the music itself is copyrighted material. So we feature exclusive interviews, and it would be a shame that we cannot broaden our audiences, our listeners, on account of copyrighted material because we played music on Bondage and Circuitry episodes. So it was very restricted to be only on one platform, Mixcloud. So after some brainstorming, came up with the idea of bringing back Bondage in Circuitry into DecayMag, so it could be under one umbrella, eliminate the music segment, and just focus on the news on industrial, EBM, witch house, goth music genres. And in addition to covering the latest trending news of upcoming album releases, upcoming concerts, etc., we also feature exclusive interviews with musicians in the field of industrial, EBM, witch house, etc. And in this episode, technically it's episode 1, but it's not, we have exclusive interviews with Philippe Deschemin, lead and programmer for the French industrial band Porn. So yes, this will be the first time, this is a first episode, and the first time we're covering Porn here on DecayMag. And also, we have an exclusive interview with Mach Fox, and he is the vocalist programmer for the industrial band right here in the US, Zwaremachine. And yes, he has a couple of announcements, exclusive announcements right here on our podcast. Great individuals that we have spoken with, and they really delve into their music and what drives them, especially being entrepreneurs and entertainment, being in an entertainment field. It is the best of both worlds, and it's a lot of work. So for all of you listeners out there who are filmmakers, artists, or musicians, do the daily grind. Don't complain about the hours. There is no hours. Do your art, market your art, and you will progress. In any event, we have some exclusive news, the trending topics on the industrial EBM witch house field, beginning with Apoptygma Berzerk, and we will delve into upcoming releases from a band that is dubbed the supergroup. Klute. If you're unfamiliar with them, you soon will be after the segment. In any event, you can find DecayMag. This is one of our 3 podcasts from DecayMag. We have DecayMag podcast running in its 9th season, and we have DecayMag Sessions, both of which covers the horror genre, with DecayMag Sessions focusing on a roundtable and or discussion group, and focusing on one upcoming film. We have DecayMag Sessions coming up. Next week is Christmas, so these are the last two episodes. This one that you're listening to now and DecayMag Sessions episode 20 will be released next week, and you can find all of these podcasts on all podcasting platforms: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, and we also provide the audio on YouTube for those who prefer to listen, for some strange reason, podcasts on YouTube. In any event, let's get started. We have a very in-depth episode beginning with music news.
Music news. Apoptygma Berzerk to release SDGXXV in 2019.
Soli Deo Gloria, released on November 11th, 2018. Apoptygma Berzerk unveiled the album to audiences back in 1993. Artifact Records issued the remastered version of Soli Deo Gloria to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the album's release. Artifact Records compiled this re-release using original source material, and this album features 7 rare bonus tracks that include the unreleased 4-track version of Ashes to Ashes and an updated version to the track Backdraft. Apoptygma Berzerk also released a special companion album to Soli Deo Gloria titled SDGXXV. Now, this release features reworked tracks off of the Soli Deo Gloria album, and contributors to SDGXXV include some of the most notable pioneers in the electronic music genre, and they include Clock Diva, Portion Control, Mortis, Chronos Titan, Ancient Method, and Codex Empire. That is an impressive lineup right there. The 4-track EP, also titled SDGXXV, features the following tracks: Burning Heretics, Cycles of Absolute Truth mixed by Ancient Method. For Backdraft, devised by the Invisible Spirit. ARP, or ARP, the No Sleep mixed by Berzerk. And the final track to this EP is Stitch, restitched by Chronos Titan. So here's a rundown. We have 2 releases, both on the same title. One is an album, one is an EP. So the SDGXXV album will feature all 4 tracks found in the EP version. SDGXXV will release on the 22nd of March 2019. The formats will be CD, digital, and vinyl. All you could pre-order via Bandcamp. And don't forget, we will be providing the links to where you could pre-order SDGXXV on our podcast notes. So you could stop by DecayMag.com, DecayMag.com, and you have all the information there on where you could pre-order the album. Now, here's the EP. SDGXXV, the EP version. It was released on the 14th of December 2018. It's available now. Go on to Bandcamp, download it, check it out, listen to it. Amazing stuff. And Soli Deo Gloria, as I mentioned earlier, released on the 11th of November 2018, also via Bandcamp and also in digital CD formats. Apoptygma Berzerk, one of the pioneers in industrial EBM, electro, dark waves, etc., etc. It's amazing that they're coming back, reinvigorating their style that many of their listeners are accustomed with. During the last few years, they had changed their audio style. Some may have favored it, some haven't. In any event, I love Apoptygma's Berzerk contribution to the genre, regardless what their musical styles are, because without change, there is no evolution. Without evolution, there is no creativity. So kudos to Apoptygma Berzerk to go retro, bring back some of their old tracks, remaster some of their old tracks, and wow, 25 years since the release of Soli Deo Gloria. Unfortunately, I lost my CD copy of Soli Deo Gloria. That really hits it personal, hits it hard. I try not to lose my CDs, but that was one of them. In any event, I will be getting this in heavy rotation here at the office. I just finished listening to SDGXXV, which, by the way, you could also find it at Spotify for those who enjoy their music on the go via Spotify. Love their song, love the album. It's very retro, nostalgic in many ways. I hope that Apoptygma Berzerk does some type of concert. We haven't seen Apoptygma Berzerk here in the US on stage in quite a while. A couple of years back, I had the pleasure of seeing Apop do a cameo appearance in VNV Nation's Compendium Tour. That was a treat, I'll tell you, and that was for the track Kathy's Song. Amazing. But a full-fledged concert, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So Apop, if you're listening, do schedule something here in New York.
Download returns with 11th album.
You know, when I'm watching the news and stuff, it seems like people almost want to hear bad things. I don't want to hear bad things. I want to hear good things.
Talking about pioneers returning with albums, this next segment delves on Download. Kevin Key, notable for his role with Skinny Puppy, also released music under the project called Download, along with Dwayne Gatto. The music project formed back in 1994, and its roster of featured members include Phil Western, Mark Spivey, and Anthony Vausick. After 5 years since the release of Lingham, Download is back, and they have announced their 11th studio album titled Unknown Room. Unknown Room features the tracks Calling Monster Island, Gaslighter, Happy Tribe Conspiracy, Tough Pause, Duga Duga, GUI Goats, 23 Years, Takadano Baba, and Check the Closet. The second track off of the album, Gaslighter, phenomenal track. Do check it out. It is on Bandcamp for preview. Key and Western, they dived deep for this release, continuing a love for the magic of synthesizers coupled with an interest in mining the sounds of the past to create something new. That, listeners, was an excerpt off of the Bandcamp profile page. Unknown Room will be released on the 8th of March 2019 via Artifact Records, and the formats include CD, digital, and limited edition formats. And when I mean limited edition, these vinyl formats are going like hotcakes. So far, there are 90 out of 500 that were initially available. 90. They're going by fast. So if you want the vinyl, do secure it. And the vinyl itself, phenomenal piece of artwork. I myself would just buy the vinyl and hang it on the wall, frame it. It's that stunning, the artwork. The album is available for pre-order, as well as the CD and digital formats via Bandcamp. And as I had mentioned earlier, Gaslighter, the second track off of the Unknown Room album, is available to preview on Bandcamp. Do go to DecayMag, DecayMag.com for our podcast notes, and we provide a link to the Bandcamp page where you can secure your pre-order for Unknown Room. Download, for those who haven't heard it, this is a type of music projects that really emphasizes the experimental soundscapes of industrial music. Industrial music has such a diverse palette of music, and that could be from synth pop to experimental to agrotech. The playing field here is large and wide. For those who are familiar with Skinny Puppy, you will not find that aggressive tonality in Download. We have here, for those who haven't heard Download before, is experimental is the best description for their music. I was very fortunate to see Download in concert years back. They shared a stage with Project Pitchfork, and I believe it was Roseland, if I'm not mistaken. Well, in any event, I digress. Phenomenal onstage performances, and one of the highlights that I remember from that concert was when one of the members of the band Download was performing, and he was digging into his bag of tricks, his arsenal. I thought he was going to whip out a synthesizer from this bag that he had on stage. What does he reveal? A toy train. One of those toy trains that you buy for an infant. Fisher Price toy choo-choo train. Puts it up to the microphone, hits a few keys on a synthesizer, and that train created some haunting sounds. I was floored. I was not expecting that. And that's the type of experimental creativity that you see in Download. A fucking Fisher Price train creating weird sounds that complements the music. Amazing, creative. In any event, I'm digressing again. Check out Unknown Room, the 11th album for Download, and as I had mentioned, Gaslighter, the second album, is a preview of what to expect off of this album. I'm certainly looking forward to this, and after hearing news of this upcoming release, I went backtracked to the previous album just to refresh my memory and what to expect. Lingam Their previous album, phenomenal, very experimental, and very mystic. If you don't know what the word lingam means, do Google it. It would enlighten your perception as well as your auditory senses.
Exclusive interview. Philippe Deschemin, aka Mr. Strangler. Vocals, drum programming, synth porn.
In our first exclusive interview, this is the first time. Let's kick it off with something comical here. This is the first time on DecayMag, whether it be written form content on our website or audio cast through our podcasts, that we are covering porn. Yes, I know, porn. Get your head out of the gutter. We're not talking about pornography here. We are talking about the French industrial music project formed by Philippe Deschemin, aka Mr. Strangler. Philippe provides vocals, drum programming, and synth to the band Porn. Here's some background information on Porn. Once again, we're talking about the band here, not pornography. According to the press release, Porn released its debut album back in 2004 and an EP a year later, which are currently available together on a Decade in Glitter and Danger album. These were followed by a second album in 2011 titled From the Void to the Infinite, plus the 2015 covers and remixes compilation album titled Deconstruct. But it was the third album from Porn in 2007 that set the stage for a trilogy story behind Mr. Strangler. The org inside, that was the first chapter, Act 1. Next year, in February 22nd, 2019, the second chapter, the second act, will be releasing across all platforms. It is titled The Darkest of Human Desires, Act 2. In this exclusive interview with Philippe Deschemin, aka Mr. Strangler, we discuss the philosophical, psychological, sociological aspects behind the stories, the trilogy of Mr. Strangler, and the org inside each and every one of us. This is one of the most profound interviews I have conducted that delves into the mindset, the creativity, the artistic level of the artist, musician, and of course the entrepreneur, because we all know that music is an art form, but music is also a product, and a product that you have to market across wide audiences. And as an independent musician, that is often a job in itself. For most indie musicians, they wear all the hats: artist, composer, lyricist, manager. The list goes on and on. Without further ado, here is my interview with Mr. Philippe Deschemin, aka Mr. Strangler. And yes, we are covering porn. Please, a little bit about yourself and what led you to form the band Porn.
I started the band when I was a student in psychology. I always wanted to play music. At this time, I didn't know I didn't play any instrument. I was only singing in few bands, rock bands, punk bands, and I'm not really at this time singing, just yelling in a microphone. And I really have this wish to compose music, to write music. So I borrowed a guitar to a friend. I asked him to show me some how to play, and I started to write music, and this is how everything started.
That is quite interesting, because for industrial ABM and even goth, the artist themselves may not know how to play a musical instrument. Take, for example, Throbbing Gristel back in the 70s and 60s.
Yeah.
They didn't know how to play guitar or drums, and they created such beautiful music, and they're so iconic in the genre.
Yeah. I think to talk about industrial music, what I like in this style, that there is no boundaries. You know, when you are playing heavy metal, deathcore, hardcore, all this kind of music, style of music have codes. And you have to respect these codes to be recognized at this kind of band. And in industrial, even if now there is some typical style in industrial, like industrial rock, industrial music, it's a style where there is no boundaries. You can do everything you want, from the very harsh noise to and switch in the same song to something more smooth, melodic, and that's what I really like in this kind of music, and that's why I consider myself as the band as an industrial rock or industrial metal band. Because to me it's important when you have an artistic view to forget all the boundaries.
Absolutely, and I agree 100%. That's why industrial, I'm glad it remains, is not mainstream, is very underground, and it always changes, always evolving, and is so revolutionary. And as you have mentioned, there's no boundaries. You could really tap into your artistic self to express the story or the theme that you want to convey to the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if it's underground, I think, in my point of view, because people are more listening to styles than bands, and sometimes you have people who say, "Oh, I listen to heavy metal or thrash metal or something," and it's more easy, I think, for a band to get attention from the people when you have all the codes. It's more easier for the people and for the market to sell your band, because it's easy to know who you are. And I like the idea, you have to be discovered, the entire sense of the word. You have to discover a band, and that's what I like when I discover bands. It's to dig into their art, dig into their discography, because the big bands that we all know, from Alice Cooper to Rolling Stones, Pink Floyd, you can say that it's that kind of band, or you can labelize them, because from the beginning to their actual career, if they are still active, they changed.
Right.
Their music changed. Like David Bowie, he started from a folk artist to glam rock to something different and something again different. And even for Nine Inch Nails, for example, almost metal from Down Spiral, The Fragile, and now in more post-punk, electro rock way. An artist, a band change. I like this idea to not be labelized.
It's absolutely true. And in 2017, Porn released its third album, The Oregon Side Act 1, and now The Darkest of Human Desire Act 2. So this is a trilogy about a character called Mr. Strangler. Please elaborate on creating this story through your music.
It all started when I was recording the second album, From the Void to the Infinite. During the process of the writing, I felt limited in my possibility to create a total story. And when I finished this album, I started a novel called Contoyen. It's a French word that I invented. Contoyen. And in this novel, the main character is speaking about an ogre inside him who is devouring him. So everything started at this time. And when I started to work on the ogre inside, I imagined a trilogy. And this first album of the trilogy, The Ogre Inside, may be considered as the childhood of this man, Mr. Strangler. And this man, this child, Mr. Strangler, in The Ogre Inside, was struggling with an ogre inside him. You know, when you are struggling against society, for example, you know, when you are something and society wants you to be another thing.
Yes.
You are under frustration, anger, like when you have to go to this job that you hate. Or maybe, for another example, if you are a young homosexual, you are struggling against what you are truly and what society wants you to be, or your parents want you to be. And sometimes that leads you to depression, madness. And to me, this is the ogre inside you. This cold anger, this frustration. And sometimes that can kill you, or you can deal with it and go. And Mr. Strangler is a serial killer. He has dark desires from his childhood. So he's struggling with that because he don't want to be that, because the societies told him implicitly to not be a killer, because the desire to kill is not acceptable for society. So in this first album, he was struggling. It's an album which is more melancholic, more lugubre than The Darkest of Human Desires. And in this second album, The Darkest of Human Desires, Mr. Strangler is accepting, he is embracing his true self as a serial killer. So in this album, he do what he like, kill people.
I see the positivity here. Most listeners, they will find the music to be quite harsh and aggressive, but hearing your explanation, it's a lot to do with individuality and being unique and going against what society wants us to be. Especially now with social media, everybody wants to to be individual and unique.
Yeah, absolutely. And to me, it's one of the biggest cause of all the suffering in the Occidental society. People are not themselves. You always have to do things that you don't want to do. You pretend to be something, to be what you're not. And I think it's a way to the happiness to accept what you are, and you have to accept what the other people are. And to me, it's, it's like in philosophy, I created this story with something extreme that a man wants to kill. But to me, it's like it's just a way to explain something that everybody feels. You know, when you in the morning you wake up and you know that you have to do something that you hate, you are going to be very, very mad all the day.
Right.
And it's sometimes easy to say that do only what you want, but the happiness is maybe between all this doing what you want and do what you have to do. and in being in the balance between those two things.
And also, you had mentioned you studied in psychology and sociology, and when I was reading about Mr. Strangler and his tendencies, I find he's more of an alter, sort of a dissociative identity or multiple personality disorder. Is that something that you crafted as well behind that character?
No, I think he's not healed, mentally healed. I think he's like that, and I think people can have this dark desires, you know?
Yes.
Some profilers talked about killing for serial killers as a sexual pulsion.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not totally agree with that, but if I go with them in this explanation, we can consider if it's a sexual thing. For example, an heterosexual can be abstinent. He can never have a sexual relation with anybody, like, a priest.
Right.
But a priest can be an homosexual, heterosexual. He's abstinent. He don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
So, because your desires are about man or woman. So if killing for serial killers is a sexual thing, maybe you can be an abstinent killer. You can have these dark desires and never practice.
Okay.
That's not make you heal. We see that like illness. In the past, homosexuality was considered as illness, and it's not what I'm saying, but pedophilia. It's an English word, when you are attracted by a child, it can be considered as the same, how they mad or not, For me, it's a very complicated thing because it's probably the most horrible of the crime,
Right.
Child abuse.
Right.
But when you think clearly about that, they can do. There's guys. It's mostly the guys can restrain that pulsion. The subject of the desires, it's a very, very, very complicated problem. And I have not all the explanation or the solution about it, but to me it's interesting to think about it,
It does have its profound, you could analyze it so profoundly on a psychological level and come up with so many different interpretations, but it all boils down to how you had mentioned in the beginning, of self-expression, being an individual, and that is so important.
Yeah, and to be yourself, I'm very influenced by a French philosopher who's called Jean-Jacques Rousseau. And Jean-Jacques Rousseau, in one of his famous books, Le Contrat Social, said that your liberty stopped when the liberty of another starts. You have to be yourself, but not by harming another, It's you, but you have to think about the others, And to me, you can be yourself if that's not a danger for the other people, So killing people, it's not really the best thing to do, even if it's your dark desires, So it's interesting to me. You have to be yourself. You have to be yourself, but with the others.
Right.
And not against the others.
Absolutely. Very profound. With porn, I was reading the press release, and one statement, one description for the band Porn is, quote, something like a beautiful, tasty fruit with razor blades inside, unquote. When I read that, I laughed because I say, wow, that describes sex, because sometimes it's beautiful, but it can be painful due to, let's say, a fetish.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that because it's provocative.
Right.
And you have to educate people. You have to be sexy. You have to attract them with glitters and all that stuff. And after that, you have their attention, and you can talk to them, etc. So I like the idea to be a trap. People who come to you, and some of them will probably hate what they found. But to me, in this trilogy, in the music, there is more than only music.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes for some people, it could be like a razor blade, because they don't want to change their mind. Because you have too much assurance about your thoughts. It's very convenient, and people sometimes don't want to open their mind to change and see things differently.
Right. And that's across the board. That is so true, especially with music. There's always conflicting or persecution thoughts because of the lyrics or the style. That we've seen that for ages.
Absolutely. And sometimes people see things that they are not in the mind of the artist or the author. And it's pretty funny too.
Absolutely. With the narrative behind The Darkest of Human Desires Act 2, what will listeners travel through? What is the story here that they will catch? We went through a little bit, but with these tracks, what would they listen to?
About the concept, the lyrics, it's almost in each song, all the songs are murder. It's sometimes a crime scene of Mr. Strangler and his crew. For example, there are songs about his dark desires. It's him talking to the people he's gonna murder and just saying to them that it's not against them. He's not doing that because he's a lot of hatred. They are dying because it's like that, and it's not personal at all. People, sometimes, when something is happening to you, something bad, you are looking for answers. And sometimes there is no answers. If you walk and a car shoots you, it's like that. And we always are searching of answers. And sometimes when they are not, we are inviting things. It's like the conspiracy theories. You can't believe the simple things. And sometimes things shit happens. And with the songs like Here for Love or Choose Your Last Words, it's about that. Don't look for answers. There are no answers. It's just like that. You have to die today because it's like that. And in other songs, there are more murder scenes. In others, there is a song called Abstinent Killer, which is about being a killer like you are heterosexual or homosexual, but being abstinent. In the lyrics, you can have the thoughts of Mr. Strangler, what he's thinking, or the lyrics are describing what he's doing.
Another thing that really stands out for this album is you have incorporated voice samples from Aleister Crowley. For those listeners who aren't aware, Aleister Crowley founded the Church of Church of Satanism, but the philosophies that he conveys is, most people would think it's dark, but it's not dark. It actually ties into the theme in which you present about being individual in the society, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Aleister Crowley is present in the Ogre Inside album, in the first part of the trilogy, and I choose him because of his famous quote: "Do what you will, shall be the word of the law." Exactly. And that's absolutely what you are saying. The character is struggling with his personality and what society wants him to be. And it was interesting for me to use Aleister Crowley. In the Darkest of Human Desires, there are spoken words too from serial killers, from Charles Manson, which Charles Manson is not a serial killer, but he's considered like that, so there is Charles Manson, Richard Ramirez, Ed Kemper, Jeffrey Dahmer, and Gerard Schaeffer. All of them have their songs, and I use interviews they did, and I took special sentence from them. To me, it's interesting to have true serial killers talking in this album, to be more near of the true. Right.
That is really thinking outside the box there. So I gotta applaud you for that one. That's genius right there.
Yeah, well, I don't know if the people will think that, because it's always the thing that, and I have feelings too, right. And I could understand people. These guys killed people. Right. I know that people who suffered from that, families, etc., right, will not see it like we do. I did it, but I know that, and it matters for me. I don't act like shocking to be provocative. I know that, but to me, what I wanted to do is bigger than that, because I did it. I know that it will be, probably we will have a misunderstanding with that, and people will not be that enthusiastic by hearing the album with these serial killers.
Right, and that all ties into what we were just talking about, closed-minded people, or people who sees controversy, where you and I see artistic value. And industrial music is known for using samples from movies, horror movies, and other songs, and we use it creatively.
Yeah, absolutely. And the character, Mr. Strangler. Mm-hmm. I don't think Mr. Strangler as a killer exists. There is only one character who is close to him. It's Alex in Clockwork Orange. Alex in Clockwork Orange, he's doing what he's doing just for fun. And in the movie and in the book, his guys wanted to steal money, wanted to make money from the crime. And Alex have a fight with them and say, no, we don't do that for money. If you need money, take it, but don't make it a business. And all the serial killers I have studied, all these guys in this album are not doing that because they are true killers. And some of them explained it in these interviews. And it's important to hear them because, for example, Jeffrey Dahmer is a homosexual killer. He killed homosexual because he was homosexual, and he never accepted it himself and all his family. So he had relation with men, and he killed them after because he was too shameful, and he said it himself. So we can consider that the society who is anti-gay is responsible, because if homosexuality wasn't a crime, wasn't seen that bad, he will not have this dark feelings. To me, it's important because Mr. Strangler is the quintessence of the killers. It's something that not exists really. But all these killers, when you ask them and when they explain their feelings, you understand why they do that. And in some ways, the society is responsible of what they feel and what they did. But it's more convenient, to say that they are evil, right, they are the devil, etc. It's more convenient because you don't look closely at how our society works.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one, and unfortunately, that is not the case. And of course, you have the propaganda and the media that also adds fire to making these individuals evil, as opposed to seeing society themselves as a source of them committing their atrocities.
Absolutely, and it's very particular in the US. You have this kind of very particular killers, very famous. Here in Europe, we have our own, of course, but they are more that famous because they are poor guys. So, a lot of them are very, very poor guys. They went in jail several times, and they are serial killers because they killed many times, but not like Hannibal Lecter. You know, they are just criminals. You know,
right.
rapists,
okay.
or criminals. They are not they are not Hannibal Lecter.
Right. And it's funny that you mentioned, before I jump into the next question, it's funny that you mentioned Hannibal Lecter because, in one way, society labels these serial killers as the source of evil, the devil, but yet we glorify serial killers by making them sophisticated like Hannibal Lecter. It's a paradox.
Absolutely. Because I think that we all are, because of this ogre inside, you know, inside us, we all are serial killers. We all of us wanted one day to kill someone, and we wish to be Hannibal Lecter because he have no feelings. He can do whatever he wants. He have no remorse, and we have remorse. We do something bad, and we have remorse, even if we are happy to do what we have, beat someone, steal someone, but after that, 2 days after, 1 day after, we will have remorse. Everybody, you know, even Hitler was kind with his girlfriend and his dog. There is no 100% evil. There is no. We all have feelings. Some of us more than others, you know, but we all have. And we like to create, Hannibal Lecter is like, you know, a demigod or a god. It's the personification of what we want to be, maybe. This kind of guy outside of society, above society.
Interesting perspective, very profound.
And just to finish about that, you know, here in France, in France or in Europe, we don't have this very famous serial killer. We have some of them, but we are creating a new kind of evil terrorist because we have a lot of terrorist problems. You know, in the US, you have the mass shooters. You have people who kill people at school or in the streets. We don't have that here. We have terrorists. We have poor guys who shoot people in the streets. So all our creation of evil, of evilish people, are terrorists here in Europe. Because we can't, the majority of the population don't understand how it's that possible for someone to take a gun and shoot people at random.
For the creative process for porn, I see the Organ Side Act 1 and now the Darkest of Human Desires Act 2 released practically back to back. What was the creative process in getting these two albums out so quickly?
To me, it's quite the same album. I'm already working on the third part, and to be effective, to put the real feelings and the good feelings in it, I have to work on the whole trilogy.
Okay.
That have to be very close because I have to be near of the character to write the best story, you know, I can. So I have to work on it on a short scale.
Okay. And also, you've worked with Tom Baker, he's notable. He worked with Rob Zombie, Nine Inch Nails, Marilyn Manson. Will upcoming collaborations, let's say remixes or upcoming albums for porn, involve different bands in different fields, let's say Asylum or Zoe Zanias or Diform, for example?
We are working on the remix of the songs of the Darkest of Human Desires. So we will release them during the year, I think. With they are some music video to come, and we will release the remixes with them. I think we will probably work on the new album with Tom Baker again, because the guy is a legend.
Of course.
And it was very simple with him, because to be honest, we tried first mastering with another guy in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't that satisfied by the master, and I was talking with a friend who's a musician too, the guy from the band Hurtley. They did some remix for us, and he told me try with Tom Baker. So I contacted him. He's very, very busy. We find a slot to work on this album, and it was very, very simple. The guy is he understands this kind of music. He mastered the biggest album of the musical style, from Down Spiral, Antichrist Superstar, Rob Zombie, Orgy. So it was very, very, very easy, and I was very honored to work with this guy.
Right, and I agree with you. He's worked with some top names, and that's just something, another aspect of the production value behind the Darkest of Human Desires Act 2. You have a well-known, respected mastering engineer behind the project. That's a highlight right there.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And we have some, I recorded the album by myself, and I have a lot to learn. And I'm quite glad with that, to know that I have a lot of improvement to do. And, I'm not that good. And I know that, and I know that I will improve myself as a producer. And working with guys like that, it's very enthusiastic.
Right. Yeah. And that all comes with being an artist. We always learn. We never stop learning. And when we think we know everything, there's something new to learn. And that's part of the evolution of the craft and the message sending out to either the viewer for movie or music for the listener. Absolutely.
And I'm working on the third part of the trilogy. To me, it's important to have a coherent sound, something that evolve during this three album, but something very coherent. After that, I don't know what I will do. Probably I will try different things musically, a different approach. So it's like I don't know where I'm going after the third part, but I'm sure that I would be glad to go there.
Right. It's all part of the journey. That is so true.
Absolutely.
And especially when you're delving into different genres. Let's say, for example, if porn goes into classical, that would be fantastic as well.
Yeah, and I have no fear about that. Sometimes in life, and in everything in life, people don't see or understand that it's like a marathon. Mm-hmm. Life, your career, musical career or artistic career, is like a marathon. It's a long way, and it's just when you are at the end, and you never know where is the end, that you can have a big picture of your art. And people want everything now. It's right here, right now.
Right.
So to me, it's not how I see things. I think that the ogre inside, the first part, will be here differently when people will discover the third part, the second part. Mm. To me, when the trilogy will be finished, you will understand more about the second part and the first part. And it's like that for life, I think. It's when everything is done that you can see what this is. It's like, you're looking at the sky. You are seeing our galaxy. You can see our galaxy, but it's quite weird because we are in it. but it's huge. It's so huge that you can see our galaxy. It's like, when you look at your body, you see your hands, you see your foot, but you can't see how you are entirely, even if you look in a mirror. And I think when you are creating things, it's just when it's finished that you can see what you finally done. It's like, in psychoanalysis, you're doing things that you can understand because you're doing it. You're doing it quite automatically, and in the end, you will understand what you're doing. And to me, it's like that. I see my artistic work, but I'm sure that after this trilogy, I will try something different, and I will try to put all my heart in it, all my feelings, to do it very, very, very in the best way I can, and artistically, not for the market,
Of course.
Artistically.
Of course, that's most important. And speaking about being artistic, our final question: you released a novel, you're releasing music, and you have music videos for porn. Are there any platforms for the band Porn that would be used, especially on social media, to expand on the story or on the band? Let's say behind the scenes, or a video of you composing music and putting it on Instagram.
I'm working on a series of videos for YouTube where I will explain the concept of the album. I want more interaction with our followers. So we are working on some videos called The Darkest of Human Desires track by track, where I will explain each song. And we are working on more of behind the curtain of porn, how it works, the process, the making of the videos, how we are on tour, etc.
It's so important to use social media, especially to connect with followers, and you explaining how each track is perfectly fitting for how the behind the scenes of how everything works and the story behind each track.
Yeah. We have a strange relation with our followers, because some of them are afraid, and they told us that to like our post in Facebook, etc., because they don't want their families, their professional contact, to see them liking something called porn.
Porn.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. They are following us, but not that clearly. Not like with another band, because they don't want to explain that. No, it's just a band called Porn, etc., etc. So we are working on the more interaction with video to explain, etc., to work on this kind of problem we have with them. In the beginning, we have T-shirts just with porn, a big porn written on them, and we sell 0 of them because people tell them we cannot wear that on the street, especially when you're a girl. Just a big porn on the t-shirt. So now with the new t-shirt, there is artwork and the porn is a logo, so it's more easy. But before we have just a porn with capital letters, white in a black shirt, so it was very, very strange. And even me, I didn't wear them because it's quite odd, you're on the street with a big porn on your shirt. It's very, very strange.
I can see that. I was making a joke as well. I says, "Wow, this is the first time DecayMag, and I'm covering porn." And my wife laughs. Says, "You covering what?"
Yeah, I know that, and I found that funny because people sometimes told me, "Oh, I was listening to music," and my mom said, "What you're listening to?" Is porn, and they say something else. Sometimes corn or born, but not porn.
Nope.
So it's I found that funny, and even when I was more young, I'm 40 years old this year. When I was younger, in works or something, people always told you, you're a band, you're in a band, you're in a band. I said, yes. And what is the name? You say, porn. And the people say, okay. Sometimes they ask, sometimes they just say, okay.
Right,
so
right.
It was very, very funny. Now I don't. I found that funny, but in the early years of the band, it was quite strange.
Well, it is unique, and yes, even though it's strange, it has identity.
Yeah, absolutely. And in Spotify, there is a playlist made by Spotify called, for Marilyn Manson, this is Marilyn Manson, or this is Nine Inch Nails. And we don't have our own. And I want to write them to say, why don't you make a playlist for us called This is Porn?
This is
and
porn.
Just the name, This is Porn. Yeah, that's too funny. It's very, very funny. But I hope we get more bigger, and people will when you say porn, they think about the band and the pornography, and I think it's a kind of goal for me, to be this kind of band when your word is more. The name of your band is more important than the word himself, but pornography is so huge, as an industry and in internet. I don't think it happens that easy or that quick.
Let's see, find out.
Yeah, maybe for a band like Police,
right? Exactly.
It's quite the same. This is Police, but there's a lot of band with very like Ghost. They are this kind of bands with name very evident. When you said why is any band choose Ghost before Ghost?
Mm-hmm.
It's when you think about it, it's strange. There is a band called Satan too. It's an American band. I think it's an heavy metal band called Satan. It's interesting too. Or like a Queen,
Right.
Queen. It's
exactly.
a big name, Queen.
Right. It's just building the brand, building notoriety with the fans, and then eventually it will catch on. It takes some work because you have to compete with the porn industry, but yeah, it would be there. In a few years, I'll type porn on Google, and the band will be there.
I think, and you're quite near of the truth, because in Facebook. In Facebook, the word porn is not a banned word.
Okay.
Because there is a lot of website or page called porn food, porn gear.
Right.
Yeah, and we have that much of followers in Facebook because of that. Because Facebook is suggesting our page very, very, very often because they understood that we are not pornography.
Right.
And they push the page of the band in Facebook. For the moment, that's not happening in Google. But we are going to, we have more and more followers in Google. I'm sure there will be a moment where for Google will be a safe page for them. And maybe if a lot of people are writing porn on the search of YouTube, our page will come first.
Right.
Because sometimes I have the analytics, and sometimes we have maybe 500 views global in our channel per day, just because people are searching porn.
That is hilarious.
Yeah, and the most of the search are porn, The Ogre Inside, or porn Call Me, because the song is have a success. But sometimes with the analytics you have the word,
right.
And sometimes they're just writing porn.
Oh wow!
And we are suggested. So I think if we continue to work, maybe in in some years, we will be considered, because Google have a very intelligent EA.
Yes, it does.
And
yes.
He will understand that we are safe for us. We are not pornography, and they will push us. I'm quite sure. Quite sure.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, and best of luck to everything that you have provided musically and through your novels. All the best.
Thank you very, very much for that. Appreciate.
Exclusive track play. My Rotten Realm. Porn. Music news. Klute released debut album.
Next in music news, trending news. What do you get when you put Dino Casares of Fear Factory, Jürgen Engler of Deconstructs, and Klaus Larson of Leatherstrip on the same music project? The answer is Klute. Klute will be releasing their debut album titled Planet Fear on the 1st of February 2019. Pre-orders are now available via Bandcamp. The album features 10 original songs. And here's the interesting part. The album also features a cover to the 1988 Public Enemy track titled She Watch Channel Zero. Interesting. Planet Fear will also be available on vinyl, and the tracks include If I Die, Out of Control, The Hangman, Rich Kid Loser, For Nothing, Human Error, It's All in Vain, Born for a Cause, Infectious, Push the Limit, and the final track on this album, She Watch Channel Zero. Amazing. This is a band that is labeled as a this is interesting, a super band, I don't know about that, but I tell you, putting these guys together on the same project, it is curious to see what soundscapes these will be featured on their debut album, Planet Fear. Also, they have a limited edition vinyl. As I had mentioned, they have vinyl, which is available for pre-order. 500 copies, and as of this recording, there are only 84 copies remaining. Fans of the industrial music genre are really getting their hands on this vinyl record right here. I tell you, this is an album not to be missed. I can't wait to hear what these guys come up with. This is the first, according to Bandcamp, this is the first ever industrial metal supergroup. Well, like I said, I don't know about that, labeling them as a supergroup. I don't think they are Marvel or DC musicians, but it remains to be seen and heard, as I said, what these guys could come up with in this first debut studio recording together.
Doomprofit releases new EP.
Musician Joseph Yurka, most notable for his work on Lights Out and God Help Me, now works under a new music project titled Doomprofit. The latest release through this audio aesthetic is the EP titled All the Gold You Can Eat. The release features 6 tracks, and they are as follows: Don't, I've Been Better, I've Been Worse, Home is Where the Heart Breaks, Letting You Go Was Never an Option, For a Screaming Skull, Buried on Sunday. In November of this year, 2018, Doomprofit released the EP titled End of Days. Lights Out and God Help Us finds its footing on industrial tonality, yet Doomprofit leans more towards the experimental form of electronic music, the genre known as Witch House. And the 6 tracks for the End of Days EP are D_DLGHTS, Tramadol, How to Drown, Ashes, Carol of the Bells, and the final track is called Venom. Doomprofit is the latest example of music artists bridging the gap between industrial EBM darkwave with the recent, the newborn in underground electronic music, the genre known as Witch House. And as we all know, Witch House only has a couple of years under its belt as a music genre. And if you haven't heard what Witch House is, basically it is a mash. Well, you could go to SoundCloud, you could go on YouTube. Good luck on finding any artist, because most of the artists hide their names behind characters, numbers, of foreign language fonts, you name it, it's there. But you got to find it. In the music style wise, Witch House incorporates different elements. They could take, when musicians could take a relatively pop track and slow it down, play it backwards, add some bass lines, and yeah, it's uncanny. You also have Witch House that, in my opinion, spawn trap. This is the first time I ever heard the hip-hop element mesh with electronics to create trap, and all of a sudden trap is now popular in the hip-hop genre. Many may dispute that, but I've heard it actually, that all of a sudden burst in popularity. But Witch House, in my opinion, is the new face of goth music. Of course, goth always has its place in the underground music genre, and that accompanies EBM and industrial music. But I find that Witch House incorporates many of the aesthetics visually, as well as its unique style. So it's a modern interpretation of goth. Instead of wearing the puffy shirts and the vampire fangs, we have a modern approach with ripped jeans and hiding behind a hoodie or some sort. The style varies. Anyway, I digress. Doomprofit, check it out. All the gold you can eat and end of days, and you would know what I'm talking about. It's great to see musicians really bridging the gap between these two amazing genres, which is industrial music and Witch House.
Exclusive interview. Mach Fox. Vocals, programming, visuals. Zwaremachine.
For our second exclusive interview, I had the pleasure to speak with Mach Fox, vocals, programming, and visual artist for the industrial music project titled Zwaremachine. Now, most cases, when we hear industrial music, we think of some foreign land over in Europe, Germany, Paris, France. Zwaremachine, born and bred here in the United States, specifically Minneapolis, Minnesota, USA. Here is an excerpt from the bio, a little insight on what Zwaremachine is all about. With an eerie hum, Zwaremachine embraces early EBM industrial soundscapes, while keeping their persistent darkwave experimental approach. Thoroughly deranged, Zwaremachine will trash your senses of disbelief inside of a minute into the first song and continue to do so all the way through. Do stop by DecayMag.com, where we will be providing a listing of where you could find, purchase, listen to Zwaremachine's latest releases, also upcoming tour dates in, wouldn't you know it, in Europe. Also, stay tuned. In this interview, Mach Fox drops an exclusive collaboration with a fellow industrial music artist, and I cannot wait to hear these two creatives, their spawn, their audio spawn, and their collaborative efforts. Amazing. The interview, we cover various aspects of being a creative content creator, musician, and of course, the entrepreneurial aspects of being an independent musician. Once again, This interview is with Mach Fox, vocals, programming, and visual artist for the industrial music project titled Zwaremachine. Thank you so much for your time and for this interview opportunity. Speaking about Zwaremachine, and you have an announcement for an upcoming concert in January, I do believe. That's a little surprise for this interview segment, correct?
Yes, we are. I'm playing in the Netherlands and Germany in January, the last half of January, and we're just starting to get the word out about those shows. Took a long time to book them, but they're finally going to happen.
Oh wow, that is amazing feat. Is to go overseas. That region is so they love industrial EBM. I mean, they love it over here in the US, but it's more, I would say, I don't want to say mainstream, but it's more popular over there.
Yeah, well, I feel like it kind of came out of the area that I'm going to play, so I'm pretty excited about that. Just to get into the roots of it, like kind of where it came from, and I think it's part of their culture. Like electronic music's been accepted and part of their music for so long that people just have different expectations.
A little bit about yourself, an origin story. What got you involved in the visual and also forming Zwaremachine? How did that all came about?
Well, I guess one important part was there's an artist called Todd Rundgren, and I was kind of taken by surprise when I found out that he was making records by playing all the instruments and writing everything and recording and producing himself. And when I was, like a teenager, I was kind of a loner, and that kind of made sense to me. I'm like, I don't, and as time went on, I realized I don't have to always write music with other people. In fact, for me, it's easier to just do it myself and then get some others involved when it comes time for the live show. So as far as electronic music and just getting into all that, I also loved drum machines, like the sound of Gary Newman songs, synthesizers and drum machines really sparked an interest in me. So I'd say as a teenager, way back in the 80s, I was interested in electronic music, but I wasn't sure how they were making it. It was just things I heard that sounded pretty interesting to me. And I do have a wide range of musical interests. I like everything, really. I came into bands as a guitar player mostly and moved on to, all the programming and synthesizers much later.
Especially with industrial music, EBM, darkwave, electro, etc., etc. Most cases, I would say 80% of the artists currently on the field are solo artists, and just as you described, they simply get backup musicians or singers for on-stage performances. I think that's the norm, really.
Yeah, I guess, but I did come from a punk DIY kind of band world where, I still like a band. I want a performance. I'm not super excited about one-person bands always, even though I perform solo sometimes. I feel like when I see a show and there's I call it a buffet table, but maybe a table set up with some instruments on and you got someone staring down at that, unless have your eyes closed and you're just dancing away, it's not much of a performance for me. I don't get excited about seeing that on stage. So I still do like the band presentation, but I understand why some people do it solo. And then, like you mentioned, the visual aspect, I do work in the VJ and visuals world too. So that was always a strong part of my band, or something that I pushed. In fact, I got into it so I could use it with my band. So I think if you are a solo artist, you can bring more to the stage than just staring down at your equipment and playing some great tracks. You can really do more as a solo artist, I feel like. That's what I strive to do anyways.
In that area with VJing, I am so surprised that here in the United States, it hasn't taken off. I mean, I've dabbled with some of the software out there. It's amazing. It seems to be more popular in Europe than over here, unless you go into these elaborate concerts here that they have the whole 4 monitors set up with everything is synced up visually.
I don't know. I feel like with EDM, more the harder electronic dance music, I feel like visuals are a huge part of that world and that scene, I feel like. And I guess from all the bands I know, from Wax Trax and all the old bands that inspired me, that visuals, a lot of them were audio visual bands like Severed Heads and all these bands, like that was as important as the music. It felt like it was all one package. And, I think a lot of bands do that now. And I see it a lot in the States. I don't know. I think it comes down to maybe just having to pay one more person on the crew.
Right.
But in the small industrial world I revolve in, though, a lot of these musicians are super talented and they do their own visuals. They do everything. It's pretty amazing, really.
Industrial music has been around for, I would say, past 50 plus years. And we could go back with Throbbing Gristel with their on-stage performances, which were controversial in their own time. And now that we have all these tools at our disposal with VJ software, it's basically the same thing. We're providing audio visuals, presentation, performances for the audiences.
And I even always kind of push that a little farther with, I was a screen printer also, so I would custom screen print shirts for the band, like robotic busts or something kind of on the front of our shirts. And, I also loved glam rock, so of course, I went through the phase where I'd have tons of makeup and we just would try to look like outer space weirdos or something. But I don't know. Some people are going to be instantly turned off by that. It depends on your taste. So, some people they put their nose up to that. They're like, oh, what is this? But for me, I was okay with that. I'm like, well, if they only remember that one band who had blue and white lights only and dressed weird and played this weird synthesizer music, if that's all they remembered, that's okay. Right. As long as they don't run out of the place, I don't care.
That is so true. Industrial, goth, EBM, etc., it is so strong. It really supports individuality. Everyone who goes to these clubs has their own individual style. That's what's great about this music genre.
Well, yeah, and I feel like, when you're a teenager, you're trying to fit in. So if you're into goth or I was into punk more, I was trying to look like my friends and, whatever they were doing. But I feel like when you get a little older, you just find out, well, this is what I like. I kind of still fit in with this group or that group, but it starts to matter less. So I think you're bold enough to step out. And I also feel like everyone I know who's a podcaster, a DJ, a musician, nobody's even, no matter who you are, you're not just listening to one kind of music, whether you'll admit it or not.
Right.
I'm a fan of pop music. I know all the cheesy pop songs, words to all of them, but it's like a lot of people wouldn't know that about me if they just know Zwaremachine.
Right.
So I feel like, as far as you were saying, the look and the aesthetic that people bring, the fans and the musicians, a lot of the bands kind of have this really aggro tech sound and they kind of take on a certain look. I think I'm just taking stuff from glam rock still, trying to bring it in industrial and just present it, just say, hey, here's something you can look at. It's a package. It's not just some guys getting up on stage with their street clothes. I'm trying to create a vibe and a feel, I mentioned the blue and white lighting. I would always have the club in past bands, lights or any stage lights, and we'll have our own light show, and just bring my fog and lasers, just do my own thing, kind of. It's kind of off topic from what you were talking about, but I just think people are bold with, and they're okay with being individuals now. It's okay to do that, outside of your little group.
Right, right. And believe you me, I still have my freaking boots that I used to wear, but from the industrial club days. I just found them the other day prior to this interview. Like, oh wow, I wonder if they fit. They sure do.
Do they have the cool buckles on them and extra straps and everything?
The buckles, straps, you name it, it's on it. It cost me a pretty penny.
Yeah.
They don't make boots like that anymore, I tell you. Quality in boots.
I think they have some. I think they have some stuff like that. Yeah, they might be cheaply made now and not last that long. But I think I always liked those boots, but they were out of my price range. Also, I kind of like needed something practical that I could, drive the van, load the equipment. I've always kind of been the driving force. I mean, I've had great band members and friends who offer to help and huge amounts of help along the way. But I'm just saying, I got to be ready to do everything just in case someone can't make it.
Right.
So I need like practical boots. I can't really have platform boots for loading equipment.
Zwaremachine. I've seen the album art. I've heard the music. What does Zwaremachine mean? What does the message convey through these audio visuals for audiences? What is the message here?
Well, we work with a really great artist called Paul Gerard. So all of our artwork's done by him. He's out of the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And really, when I first started the band, I was inspired by some artwork that he offered me. I was like friends with his band. We had traded remixes, and I was starting Zwaremachine. I said, "Hey, your artwork's super cool. That for your band, do you have anything, you could offer me?" And the artwork he passed over to me just inspired a song, kind of inspired the whole world where Zwaremachine lives, which is sort of this alien hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
I got to admit, I'm really inspired by horror and sci-fi, like movies and soundtracks and stuff too. So when I saw his artwork, it just sparked a whole world that I could put my band in, write songs about, be inspired from, and it's really kind of just progressed that way up till the recent album, which, I brought in some topics about cyber and horror, like zombies and stuff. So, I guess the message behind the band is like sort of an escape, a horror science fiction escape. And hopefully the music's kind of creeping in the tempo. It's not, a lot of DJs ask for a faster, you got anything at 140? I'm like, no, half, 70
Right.
as far as beats per minute. I kind of slowed this record down and tried to leave some space between the beats where this huge decayed dark reverb could kind of melt away before the next beat.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that lent to the kind of a creepier vibe and just maybe to set the music aside, but for sure, it just felt right to have slower tempos, and it kind of felt like in the dark, futuristic, horrific world where that's going to be reality. I'm just writing about it a little earlier, maybe.
When I listen to the song, I really listen to the song, and I could see this as the opening for a horror film, a sci-fi film, and even for the dance floor, the opening few songs before the club really starts pumping, just to set the mood and get people, when they're having their drink, like, ooh, what is that? And over conversation, it will spark up conversation listening to the song, because once you're on the dance floor, there's a whole different world. But some songs you want to appreciate casually, and this sounds from Zwaremachine definitely fits that.
Well, that's cool. I'm glad that you picked up on that, because and I had no goal. I mean, I didn't even know if any DJs would play it, so I wasn't thinking like, oh, what tempos are about right. And I doubt a lot of bands, like dance bands, obviously they work in a certain range anyways, but, and they might have a slower track, but I didn't really consider like anyone else when I was writing the music. I picked a bunch of, and there's sort of retro sounds that I picked, but these are the sounds that I grew up on, and I loved the drum machines and analog drum sounds, so I really kind of stuck to those sounds. And then I realized I just needed that space, so I would keep dumping the tempo down till the bass line felt right. So I keep the drums really tight, as far as like quantized, super hard on a grid, but then I let the bass line maybe be the sexy part, or, you know, kind of move around it and have a feeling. But the drums are so stiff, like drummers that I get to play with me, they kind of get bored, I think, because I try not to have any swing, or, you know, I'm not trying to have the drums be the groove. I'm trying to have the bass or a different instrument kind of groove out.
Curiosity, some remixers and electronic musicians, everyone has their own style to build their sound. What feels most comfortable to you? For example, using a DAW system, you may use the building blocks starting with the drums and build from there, or record it straight through a traditional way and build a song from there. What most is comfortable for you?
I'm really into the hardware. I've collected and amassed a lot of synthesizers and drum machines, and I love sequencers too. So I go with the hardware route first. So I painlessly, you know, over a long period of time, it takes me a long time to program a song. And once I program it, though, I do put it in Cubase, and I love to edit. So what I do on the sequencers is I'll get everything kind of arranged as a song. And then the other thing I do with my bass lines, especially for this album, I took longer bass lines that I would write out, like this big long bass line, but then I would maybe just take the 8 or 16 bar measure, and I'd maybe take 2 parts, you know, like 2 or 4. I'd cut it down really small, so it became the minimal, hypnotic, repetitive thing that I like to call my band. It's like I wrote traditionally, but then I think I just wanted to not have that cool bass line as much and just chop out a part of it and repeat it over and over. But once I get in the you know, the digital editing world, especially with vocals and stuff like that, I just love to get in there on the grid and chop stuff and move it. I used to do a lot of remixes a few years back, and I just don't have time anymore, but I love to work in the, like you're saying, the DAW or the editing phase. But I do write on hardware, you know, that's kind of how it all starts out.
And I'm aware that once you start with one, it's so addictive. You want to get every piece of hardware out there, especially the analog sounds. There's something about that, especially with industrial music, that it just sounds raw, aggressive, and vintage.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I've got some pretty cool instruments, and you know, like a custom circuit bent. It's a Roland 505 drum machine, so it's a vintage drum machine that sounds great on its own. But I have a circuit bent version made from a guy in the UK, and it's just gnarly sounding. I mean, but just the kick drum alone on that thing is, on my recordings, it's the main kick drum that cuts through. You know, I'll double it with some sub when I need to off a different machine, but it's just that industrial kick drum that works with my music, and it cuts through all the layers. You know, the other thing is, I've always had a hard time doing anything minimally. Like my live show, I bring all the lights, all the video, whatever, bring all this equipment, you know, and everyone just rolls their eyes. They're like, oh, this guy again. But it's just like, I can't do it minimally. If I have something and I think it's going to be a cool part of the show, I'm going to bring it and set it up and entertain people with it if I can. So
wow.
I guess, yeah, I love those machines though.
Yeah.
For my kind of music and the analog synthesizers, all of them. I get them in my hands and kind of like find the one thing they do. You know, that's why I have so many synthesizers, because each of them does one thing that I really want it to do.
Right.
There's no one synthesizer that's going to do everything. I've never found it.
When Reason came out, that's what really blew my mind, because I thought to myself, okay, this is trying to emulate all these synthesizers, vocoders, etc., etc. How would this really pick up? Because there's so many musicians that are really dedicated to the hardware. I didn't see that, and I'm surprised it's still in the market today. I guess it found its community, but there's still some things that you cannot emulate digitally, especially when it comes to the hardware.
Yeah, but I think if you're a songwriter or musician, at least I'm kind of self-taught. I didn't study music, but I can pick up a lot of instruments and kind of make something cool. And I had a friend show me Reason, and I messed around with it, and I made a couple cool things, but it wasn't going to be my workflow, I could tell. And I know people who use that Reason in addition to everything else they do also, maybe for just a component, a bass line or something. But I feel like every tool out there, a lot of people use more than one thing. So, and some people make great music, I'm sure, just with Reason too. Right. I mean, I'm amazed that there's so many people that are talented and basically music heads who have turned, they didn't even start out as a musician in their teens. They just turned into like learning software in their 20s and 30s and do all this amazing music,
With Zwaremachine, what is the emotional content when you start composing each song? For example, I spoke with Ronan Harris in a previous interview, and he went very philosophical on one particular song from his new album, how his emotion really conveyed on the piano. And for other musicians, when they compose music, it's like, oh, okay, I dedicated the song to my girlfriend, but without any emotional context. So in your case, what's that emotion that really goes into each song?
If I just talk about Be a Light, the record that was just, released this year, I feel like all I was trying to do was pick the sounds that I liked from, all the records that inspired me in the 80s and, somewhat into the 90s, but it was really an 80s kind of sound set, but I wanted to make music now with it. I wasn't expecting it to be a retro era recording, but I hear that all the time, how it sounds like 80s. And I'm like, yeah, that's okay. It does. I can't deny that. But I did try to have a modern twist with the mixing techniques and, the way it was mastered and stuff. I wanted it to be able to compete with music that's released today and not just be a retro artist, and thrown in that category. And I still think that's how it's picked up. I mean, I approached a couple record labels early on and they're like, we're looking for newer industrial music. And I'm like, okay, there's no such thing as new industrial music.
Right.
And industrial is broad too. I mean, you mentioned Throbbing Gristle. Their industrial is very different than, 10,000 other bands who call themselves industrial. So it's really hard to pin down that. But, and many times I'll just call it electronic music when I'm pitching it, just so that people just don't get hung up on industrial, and then they might picture one band they think is industrial and say, oh, they're that. I feel like Zwaremachine's kind of a broad range in that there's some pop elements in there, I do love a good pop twist. So, the sounds might be kind of plucky and industrial and in that world, but if you strip it down to the song structure or something too, I kept it pretty simple. I would say I gave them longer spaces to breathe. I gave some instrumental sections, so when we play it live, the live members of my band can actually stretch out a little bit. I try to keep them really tight when I'm hitting the chorus or something, but I wanted some intros and outros where they could like show off their chops and not be stuck to like a militant beat or, just the one riff that they have to play over and over. So I feel like that's the only thing I deviated, but I would say Zwaremachine could be classified as industrial pop. That's not so far off either, I think.
One thing for the industrial genre is the level of diversity, something you just mentioned right now. We could talk about a band called Frontline Assembly, and how do they compare with the band called Hocico? It's two different styles, and of course, one could jump into dubstep and incorporate that, and it doesn't work out, they'll shift back to another sound. It's all about and evolution and change. I mentioned industrial's been around for the past 50 years. If you go back to the early era of electronic music when musicians were experimenting, a totally different sound than it is right now. And that's a great thing about this genre.
I feel like all those early bands, they really like did have to work really hard and experiment, and I've heard in interviews of a lot of bands too where they just weren't accepted. You know, it was the era of punk, so they took on the ideals of punk and the attitude and the energy, but they just used different instruments, and they were just, to me, they're just as, you know, the same as punk. Is it just electronic instruments, not guitars? So
right.
I think they paved the way. I mean, music changed a lot because of electronic music, you know, production, songwriting, even all the pop music changed. And
right.
Even today, when I do, you know, I'll listen to current R&B, and some of the best stuff I like is because of the production stealing from underground electronic artists, or, you know, borrowing right alongside of them the same techniques and the same, you know, like you said, Reason and sequencers and programming drum machines. That's the stuff that I like. So no matter what genre I hear it in, I can appreciate it and see how far it's come from, you know, the mid 70s or whenever industrial, you know, started experimenting with all of those sounds. I mean, it's easy to do electronic music now. Everyone does it. Anyone can, but I think back then, you know, it was a hard path, and they fought a lot probably to get those gigs.
In engineering school, they had to teach us the old techniques, especially cutting reel to reel. I say, oh, fuck, these guys had it bad back in the days.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing. They were using, like, I'm kind of too lazy to like use tape loops and, you know, cut up tape and all that.
Yeah.
So I'll use a sampler maybe and mangle it in the digital world, you know. But yeah, that's the other thing. You know, you got to get the reel strung through the tape machine. You got to do all, you know, that stuff's big, heavy equipment too. And they were bringing that on stage too and hauling it around to gigs and stuff. You know, it's amazing. Some of that equipment's heavy and very temperamental. You know, those synthesizers, that analog world.
Oh, yeah.
The lights and the temperature and moving it around, that affects it a lot.
You mentioned something that you were pitching Zwaremachine to record labels. Let's delve into the entrepreneur aspect, because as an artist, as a musician, there's always that factor that you have to market your product, the product being Zwaremachine. So how has that been going along, being the musician and the entrepreneur?
You know, it's so much work. And I mean, I'm not going to bitch about it, because everyone out there who I know who's in a band, if they want to get out there and do it, they're doing the same thing I'm doing. It just, I mean, you have to be driven. You have to be, I mean, I'm stubborn about it. It doesn't bother me if you don't like my band. I'm still going to put it out there, because I'm going to find someone who does like it. But yeah, you know, I take the time. I researched a bunch of labels. I sent them stuff. You know, I was originally pitching Zwaremachine to a bigger, some Midwest U.S. labels that were a little bigger, and I think they were like, yeah, I don't know who this is or whatever. And you know, they already had all these bands lined up, and they have their thing going. And even if I would have been on it, I would have been, you know, 15 releases down the line. It would have taken 6 months to a year. So I was lucky. Besides all my pitching, and I guess your question was about the band and being the promo guy, right?
Yeah, the promo. Oh,
yeah, go off
the whole 9 yards. It's because being an entrepreneur, you got to wear all the hats.
Yeah, and I mean, it's okay. I mean, I feel like I just try to meet these people through email or however I can meet them on a personal level, and I just, if it feels like they're interested in what I'm doing, I'll try to have a conversation about it with them. You know, for every 100 emails, you know, there's maybe 2 that become great contacts, and I've, you know, kept for years and years. That's another thing. I was releasing albums under Mach Fox in around the 2005 to about 2010. So a lot of contacts I made back then when I started Zwaremachine, I sent them stuff first just to like sometimes just to ask them for some feedback because they were old friends from the music world. And a lot of them would say, oh, hey, I didn't know you were still doing something, or, and then they'd offer up some words, and it seemed like the response was good. So then I started reaching out to people I didn't know. And at least for the record label, Sage Tapes, that Zwaremachine works with, he was local, actually, from Minneapolis, the city I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
And he had been to some shows, and I think I had posted maybe that I wanted to release something. And so he contacted me and said he would, be interested to put it out. So that was huge. That was a really cool label, and someone who was, offering to do it, that I didn't have to hustle up. And the other thing he said, as soon as you're ready, we'll, get the cassettes and the CDs and everything made as soon as you're ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
So that was important to me too. I didn't have to wait a year to release my record.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It's just a lot of work. It's just time.
Right.
It's time. And I think a lot of people have a problem. They're not comfortable, and I wouldn't call it spam, because I understand that boundary.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times I'll ask through a message on Facebook, can I send you a link to my band?
Right.
You don't have to spam everybody, and you don't have to be afraid too, because, people like you and people who are into music, if you send them something and it's in their, their wheel base where it's the stuff they like, they're going to respond.
Right.
And if they don't respond, that just means they didn't see the message or they're not interested.
Right.
So you got to send out a lot of messages.
Oh yeah.
Maybe get some responses.
There is also that fear of rejection, really. You're dedicating your time, you're creating your music, you spend hours creating the music, and you have your product there, and you want to market, but there's that fear. They want to send 100 emails, they get 95 rejections, and they feel deterred. It's all about continuing, and just like how you elaborated, it's not really spam. You're marketing your product. You want to get your product in front of as many people as possible.
There's also, I know a lot of people who you can pay and get promo done a different way.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been in that DIY punk world that I come from. So I'm like, you know what? If I ask someone else to do something, I don't know when they're going to do it, if they're going to do it, if it'll be done to my expectations.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So it's almost easier for me to just do it. There is a lot of time involved, like I said, but I mean, I would rather, meeting people who are into this kind of music, because inevitably I'll find out about their band or another band that's, they'll say, hey, if these guys are kind of like you. So it's always really cool to meet other people who are into music, and certainly don't be afraid of, any kind of rejection or something. Music's the same kind of music isn't going to be listened or favored by everyone. Someone's going to like what you're doing, no matter what you're doing.
Right. Yeah, that goes across the board, especially with the internet. You have so many so-called trolls all over the place that really grow on the hate. But with that, you see the positivity in that, because people might take the hate as negative. You take it as a positive. Okay, you may not like it. Okay, cool. At least you heard it. There you go.
Yep.
Positive.
Yep, exactly. Well, and that's another thing with Zwaremachine. I'm so lucky to work with Paul Gerard as an artist. So
Mm-hmm.
I think half the battle is people like you and blogs and podcasts and radio. Just imagine you probably know, but I imagine they get tons of messages from bands. Some bands have no clue that they shouldn't even be submitting maybe to a dark podcast or a horror or a industrial podcast, and they're pitching their pop band.
Right.
So having to wade through all that is really mind-boggling, I bet, as a podcaster or a radio person, a DJ. So we had this wicked artwork. You
Mm-hmm.
get this little thumbnail maybe with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think that might have been the spark that intrigued a lot of people to maybe click that link.
Right.
I think without it, we would have just been another band. And I try to tell people that too, have everything together when you're pitching this too, because these people don't have time to research it. They don't have time to go to a broken link. you got one shot. If they click on it and your link doesn't work, you're done, you know? Yeah, you just need everything together.
Right. When you have your EPK, the electronic press kit, have all your links, all your photos, headshots, all the info, bio, everything, social media links, all of that helps. Throw the kitchen sink in there too.
Well, and especially nowadays, everyone is so busy, you know, and that's why I say you only get one chance too. So, and I don't even, you know, EPK, I don't even have technically one. I just make a link in Dropbox, but I have everything there that's ready to be published. So, you know, the same link will go to radio that goes to blogs, but if a blog decides, hey, this is cool, I'm going to make some, they don't have to, everything's there. They don't have to get back to me. Do you have a photo? Do you have a logo, you know, and where's your website? They don't have to do anything. They can just look in the folder. They can publish anything and make their post, or, you know, their online blog will have a new post. So
right.
I don't know, you know, help them out, do part of the work for them. I mean, it goes both ways too. I'm so happy and thrilled that people will take the time to listen to this stuff, and so many people have shared it and downloaded it. That's making money off of this. You know, I'm basically give away a lot of the music, and that's fine. You know,
right.
There's a time to make money, and maybe that's going to be selling merchandise at shows. You know, right now we're generally losing money at most shows. So and these shows, you know, going to Europe's going to take a lot of money, but it's also going to be a lot of fun. So I'm not worried about that.
Oh, absolutely. And it pays off at the end. This is your investment. You're investing your time. You're giving out, because I'm looking right now at the Zwaremachine Bandcamp. You have a track, single, free download. It's all part of the advertising, the marketing, and in the long run, it's going to pay off. It's all part of that journey.
I don't know. Trying to charge $1 for a single like that, it's like, you know, keep your credit card in your pocket. Don't even bother. You can have this. And I was also hoping to check out our debut, and, you know, so I wanted a kind of a bonus single. This was the kind of the lost song that didn't get tracked for the album because it wasn't quite arranged yet. But ever since the album release show, it's been our opening track every show. Every single show, I think it's the opening track. So, or, you know, Remain Unseen is. So I thought it'd be cool to get that out there before the end of the year as just kind of a thank you to everyone, and say, you know, thanks for checking out our other songs. Here's kind of something new. You know, I've kind of juggled some band members, so now I have a live bass player, and he's featured on the track. So it was kind of also a nod to say, hey, here's what we might sound like next year, or if you see us live.
A couple of questions to close out the interview. One being, what are some of the upcoming collaborations, performances that you have in store for the 2019-2020 calendar year?
Well, I'll give you an exclusive breaking news item. Ayatoya, who you just had on your show, was that one broadcast yet?
Yes, it was.
With her?
Yes.
Great. Her and I are collaborating on a track. She's a fantastic singer and a great producer and musician. So I had contacted her. I've been looking for a singer to re-release an old Mach Fox song I've been performing with Zwaremachine, but it has a little different vibe. It's not so dark. It's almost romantic. You know, it's a little different vibe. But I wanted to find the right singer to, you know, retrack it and kind of do a new version of it. And it just seemed like the perfect, you know, she had a really cool voice, and I knew she could do it. And I was just blown away by her. She sent me a sub mix of her vocals, and it just sounded great. I could already hear. I'll just do a couple edits here, and it's going to be perfect. So that's our exciting collaboration. We're going to release probably in February of 2019, and I don't know, you know, how we'll do that. It might be a free download, and kind of we're also doing that as promo for a some touring dates that we're doing together with Zwaremachine and Ayatoya. She's going to have her Code Blue tour, and we're doing Cold Bill shows for a bunch of shows in the Midwest U.S. in March, April, and May of 2019.
So
we're just going to be doing weekend shows here and there every chance we get for a few months.
That sounds great. And Ayatoya, she was on our season 9, episode 6, and also that was a rebroadcast of the interview that we had did earlier this year for another podcast, which had died down, unfortunately. But it was a rebroadcast. I'm glad to hear you guys are collaborating. I can't wait to hear that track, and also congrats on that joint concert tour you guys are going to be doing together.
Yeah, that's going to be really fun. I just feel like we're going to be able to offer a great show, and it just kind of fell together. You know, I think we talked about doing the shows together before the collaboration, and once we had started booking some shows, I was like, well, hey, you know, I've got this song that I need a singer for, and then we could actually do it live as part of the show, you know, kind of perform it live. So I'm pretty excited. She's super talented. All this booking's been going pretty smooth. So we've got a lot of shows. I don't know personally, my band, to get the band members out on the road for a week is going to be really hard. So that's why we're concentrating on, you know, our area, the Midwest U.S. for mostly some weekend shows. But I have a feeling in the summer, and I've talked to Ayatoya about this, I have a feeling in the summer we'll try to stretch out a little farther, you know, whether it's west or east. We'll try to make it to some of these other places that, you know, I know some promoters and there's been some interest. So it'd be great to get a little farther out and treat everybody to a show.
Right. Well, east first, please, because I have to see you guys live here in New York.
Oh, that would be a pleasure. Well, I'll talk to her about it. I know that's that's a plan. It's just a little bit harder to do with those some longer drives or, you know, just the time. But that's kind of my goal. It's like I had a goal of playing in Europe. Luckily, that's going to happen now. And then I had planned on touring for my record last fall, but I was kind of juggling band members, and it just seemed so hard. You know, for some reason I had it in my mind too that it had to be a 1 or 2 week long tour, and I just couldn't get the people together for it and book it. So now, you know, just taking some weekends to get out there and kind of keep building things in the meantime. You know, I don't want to drive to New York and play to 20 people if we can, like, maybe push it back a little farther and play to 120 people. You know what I mean?
Right.
I feel like there's no reason to rush it. I mean, I love touring and playing shows live, but, you know, I want to make it worth it for the clubs that have us. I want the promoters to be happy. I want people to be able to hear it if we go drive to see them. So.
Right. Yeah. And
that's the goal, though. We'll get there.
Absolutely. And that goes back to what I was mentioning earlier, wearing all the hats. It's a grind. It's a grind. To close out. Yeah. To close out the interview, open platform, pitch as many things as you want with Zwaremachine, albums, singles, concerts, social media handles.
Basically, Zwaremachine, ZWARE machine.band is our official website, and all of our links and, you know, there's lots of cool stuff there. All of our upcoming show dates for 2019, everything's up to date there. So that's probably your easiest bet. You know, otherwise we're on Facebook, and Bandcamp is a great place to go stream our music for free. And if you like it, you know, see what you want to pay for it, or, you know, buy it. We also have physical copies, you know, the CDs and cassettes via Phage Tapes, our label, and that's PHAGE tapes, and they'll get everything to you if you want a physical copy. And yeah, if you're in the Midwest U.S., definitely look for our dates around there, March, April, and May, and into the summer we'll start getting more dates posted.
Oh, great. Thank you. And of course, we're going to be great. We're going to be posting all this information in our podcast notes as well. For the listeners, could go on to DecayMag.com, DecayMag.com, and our podcast notes will have all the information for Zwaremachine, links, social media handles, etc., etc. Thank you so much for your time for this interview and all this rich information on your music career and Zwaremachine.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. Thanks for having me on the podcast, and we'll keep in touch. I'll make sure you get the song is called "Smile That Killed the Country." And that's the song I'll be collaborating with. It's a little twist. You'll see, but I'll make sure you get a copy of it early on when it's ready to go.
Oh, I am looking forward to that. I tell you, I honestly can say that. Well, happy holidays too. It's next week. Before the podcast began, I didn't even know it was next week. So happy holidays to you. Happy New Year.
Yeah, have a great New Year, Ken.
Exclusive track play. Be a light. exclusive interview. Johnathan Thompson, Child of Night.
Presented here is a rebroadcast of an interview that I conducted earlier this year with Johnathan Thompson, one half of the dark wave duo Child of Night. Child of Night is based here in the US of A, specifically Columbus, Ohio. And their music style, according to Bandcamp, is a distinct blend of electro, cold, and gloomy sounds. This rebroadcast of the interview, it first originally was broadcast on Bondage and Circuitry Radio, and now, since we are forming a new podcast here specifically centered on news and interviews with industrial, EBM, goth, darkwave, witch house, etc., etc., this is a fine addition to this slate in this episode of interviews and news. Once again, Johnathan Thompson, one half of the duo of Child of Night, here is, with great pleasure, my rebroadcast of the interview conversation. Thank you so much, Mr. Thompson, for your time. For this interview, we're going to be discussing various elements of your project, Child of Night, delving into industrial, witch house, and other topics as an indie musician. So thank you for that.
Sounds great.
And I'd like to kick off the interview by providing the interviewee with a moment to introduce themselves, an origin story. Every superhero has one. And a little bit about your career and your project, Child of Night.
Well, I'm Johnathan Thompson. I think my origin story is maybe largely underwhelming. Grew up in small town Ohio. My musical career is maybe slightly more interesting. I started out playing, I guess, in a number of extreme metal bands, ranging from like tech metal to grindcore and verging on noise type stuff. Until after that, I guess I started playing in traditional goth, and then I had a witch house project for a while, and then which is still ongoing. And then my self-interest in started Child of Night about 1.5 years ago.
Thank you for that. And 1.5 years, and you've accomplished so much. Tell us about your latest release. I just happened to see it is on Spotify. You have a single out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the single is Sirens. It's off of our upcoming EP called What Remains. We've been working on that for, I guess, about 4 or 5 months. After we put out the first EP, we wanted to spend a little bit more time and play the new songs live. I wanted to see what works and what doesn't work, and then make changes and like have that sort of organic process that we didn't really have for the first EP. I think those results should speak themselves.
Right. And for performance live, is especially for the field, Witch House is so experimental. Is this a stage that you present the new material for, things that you have been experimenting in the studio with?
I think we wrote this new material to be performed live. And in general, I think we write using hardware, so it kind of has a little bit more of a live feel anyway. If that makes sense. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Yes. Being that I've attended and experienced some live concerts. One in particular that I always remember is Download, when they were performing back in the days, and some of the tracks that they have on their albums, some of the tracks, some of the tracks they perform on stage were not on their albums. Hence the question, because musicians like to just take out some weird gizmos and start experimenting on stage, giving the audiences something new that they don't hear on the album.
So live, there's an element of that for sure. We have, we do like live, noise electronics, I guess, like experimentations with, largely atonal synthesizers that are never really the same from, one performance to the next. So there's always an element of, a different show each time we play. With like, we have some sequence stuff that is always familiar, and then we perform songs, but we like to perform them in a way that's different every time.
That is cool. It brings audiences something fresh and something different.
Yeah, that's always cool.
With this new evolution with Witch House, this is a genre that just appeared out of nowhere a few years back, and to my recollection, it was just something that was made to make fun of the mainstream music genre, and it's exploded ever since. What is your opinion on this new music genre blending into industrial and goth music?
So my first experience with Witch House was, I guess, picture plane, kind of put out some stuff that was considered Witch House at the time, or like that was like a term that was being thrown around. And then, I guess like Salem and Crystal Castles back in the early 2010s or late 2000s, I can't, somewhere in that era or area of time. I don't know that Witch House has ever had its own distinctive sound until it did, with like White Ring and to some extent like the last Crystal Castles record with Alice and Crimes, kind of that like detuned super song. I don't know for like every synth sound in the song, but I don't know that I guess it is kind of leaking into other genres, but it seems to me like more people see that there's some hype around that term and then use it to describe their music, when in reality, I don't know that it sounds like that. Does that make sense to them?
Yeah, yes, I got it. I completely agree. And when I saw Witch House was starting to come out, it was just an anti-mainstream genre, and that's why they have all these weird characters in artist names, and now it's becoming mainstream, ironically.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's nothing against anybody that's performing in that genre. I mean, I enjoy it. Like, I like trap beats, Mm-hmm. I enjoy that sort of thing. I like, it's fun. It's fun to listen to. It's fun to dance to. It's fun to struggle to search for on Google because you have to memorize all of the ASCII characters to look up a band name. But I don't know. I'm rambling now.
It's a good ramble. For the sounds for Child of Night, there seems to be so many elements, and this is for me personally as a music aficionado. I appreciate when a musician really incorporates different styles into the song, because in this era you have to be one step ahead constantly with the evolution. What are some of in your opinion, the soundscape that you infuse into your music to make it so distinct?
That's complicated. I think part of it is Tristan and I have very different influences. I'm influenced by a lot of, like, I guess, there's like some traditional goth and like cold wave and like early industrial influences when I'm writing stuff, but he's influenced really by a whole separate palette of different bands that I would never listen to. Actually, he's not particularly interested in adhering to any of those sorts of like established norms, and I think that the difference between how we view writing songs is really how we're able to, I think, fit into the overarching umbrella of this whatever goth, post-punk, alt, alternative umbrella, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. There's so many different terms to describe things that are all pretty similar. But I think the reason that we don't really sound like anyone else is because he brings an influence to the table that's really different than a lot of other bands that are going on right now.
Right. And once again, I agree. There's so many labels, and it's just difficult to put a label on a particular type of sound. For so many years, the past 30, 40 years, industrial, goth, and EBM has evolved, and these sounds are so different. No two bands or no two projects of the same musicians sounds alike, and that's the best thing about this genre.
Oh yeah, it's endlessly entertaining. I mean, as soon as you think you've heard it all, there's 100 bands that sound completely different from what you would expect them to sound like. And some of the reasons we chose to start experimenting and creating in that umbrella is just because you can do pretty much whatever you want to, and there's a listenership and a scene that's open-minded enough to accept and appreciate it.
For your creations of the songs right now, what is the process? What traditional songwriting? I know for this particular genre, we have a lot of electronics and, of course, acoustic instruments at our disposal. So when compiling a song, what is the first steps to create that craft from the idea to the DAW system?
I guess our processes are different. We both write songs, and then we usually trade them back and forth and make changes until we feel like they're done. But I guess my starting point is I usually either write a bass part, like a bass guitar part, and then a rhythm, and then I'll loop that and add synthesizers to it to try and kind of build up songs, and I guess the same sort of way you would with techno. Okay. Kind of, but I try and make it feel a little different than that. But I guess from a writing perspective, it would be pretty similar to that.
Okay. It's interesting. I'm always interested to nitpick on the brain of a musician, especially in this field, because everyone has a different technique to write their songs. Some incorporate the MIDI, others draw, paint. Others use balaks to incorporate the synth and then the bass, and then use the building blocks for there. So it's just so many ways to get that creativity out.
Oh yeah, we use a number of different techniques. We'll use anything from, depending on what synth we're using to add those layers. Some synths respond better to use it playing with a MIDI keyboard and recording that way, or we use sequencers a lot too, like the TR style sequencing is something that we like. You can probably hear that all over the music.
The old vintage sound, correct?
Yeah.
I see a lot of musicians stick to the vintage stuff. It just sounds so warmer. That's like using a condenser microphone. Everything sounds so warm and different.
Yeah, I think I guess I like hardware sense. But I wouldn't consider myself like any kind of a snob in that regard. Like, I don't think that there's anything wrong with using VSTs either. To a lot of your listeners, most people probably can't tell the difference between a high quality VST and like a vintage synthesizer at this point, just because the technology there has gotten like so good that I don't know that it's necessarily super possible to hear that difference, depending on, like, I think what makes more of a difference right now is how you're recording. Like, if you recorded all of those to like a full song to a cassette using VSTs, I don't know that people would necessarily know the difference.
That's an interesting perspective, and it's true because with systems like Reason that is out on the market that can emulate pretty much anything, it's true. It's very hard to, unless you have an astute ear to the sound, it's very hard to make the difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your performances, you're based in Columbus, Ohio, which is a coincidence because on our horror platform, our co-writer is based in the same area. So I thought that was nice. Amusing and coincidence.
So we're based. I'm in Columbus right now because we're playing tonight. But I'm based in Pittsburgh, and Tristan's based in Columbus. I recently moved up there for work. We have a bit of a commute each time we want to practice and play.
Wow, that is dedication, I tell you.
Yeah, well, we like what we do a lot.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And with the day job and growing a music project at the side, do you feel that for other musicians out there, they feel that constraint of time really hinders their ability to progress, and they feel that obstacles are in their way?
I'm sure people do feel that way. I sometimes feel that way. And, I work a full-time job outside of playing in a band that is now playing a lot of shows and touring, and we're constantly recording and writing. I think it all comes down to, I guess, time management is important, and also I don't really sleep that well, so I use time that way instead of sleeping.
I think every.
But I can imagine. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I think every content creator, musicians and filmmakers and everything in between has some type of sleeping problem.
Yeah, probably. I'm not sure which way it goes. Like, I don't know that if you're a consistent creator, maybe you can't. It's harder to sleep, or if it's the case that if you can't sleep, it's easier to create. I'm not sure which one it is, but could go either way.
And delving into the topic of social media, this is a very important platform, especially for independent artists. Utilization of SoundCloud and Instagram. As a musician, do you find it difficult to collaborate with other musicians outside the genre of industrial?
Not really. I mean, we play with all kinds of different bands. In all kinds of different genres. I think as long as... social networking is important online, right? Like, Instagram is important. I honestly don't know that I think that any of the other social networking platforms actually are important right now. I think we could probably survive without any of the other ones and only have an Instagram would be just fine. But what's equally as important, if not more important, and has always been important since this whole thing has been going on, is meeting people and making friends in real life.
Right.
And and that's the purpose of social networking, is to meet people and make friends. It's not about like having a million followers, because it doesn't matter. It's about meeting other people that are interested in the same things as you are and making friends. And in that regard, I think it's easy to collaborate with like-minded individuals in any genre, as long as you share some sort of mutual interest.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? It'll kind of answer your question.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. And to touch up on the followers, so right now Instagram has the follow your persons who do that. I term it vanity ratings, because it's all, hey, look, I have 2 million viewers, so what? But what is the product? What is it that you're offering your audience that is a benefit? That's what counts.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's about content. We do not follow to unfollow. I run our Instagram account. And I do follow people, but generally speaking, I follow people who it seems like have a mutual shared interest in what we're doing. And so that's, I don't know that our band is ever going to be at a point where I really consider us like huge. I don't think that that's possible, but I think that we probably can make a number of friends and all around and visit people and have a good time. Like, I mean, after all, like, the music is dreary because the world is dreary, but the point of going out, like, seeing a show is to escape from that for a moment and have a good time. Another rambling answer, but I think that it's not what we were trying to talk about.
You're speaking the truth here. When I went to my first concert, that was the experience that I felt. It was like an escape. And I was the sticking out like a sore thumb, not dressed for the scene. I had a shirt and tie, and everybody else was dressed in black. But hey, I embraced the scene. I embraced the music. So with the content and the performances, you guys, I'm sure there's someone in the audience that would feel the same way.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really care how you dress when you come out. It doesn't, like, it's cool to see people in their best traditional goth clothing. I like that. Don't get me wrong, but like, it doesn't matter. I mean, we're all forced to live in this fucking cyber dystopia that we're living in. I'm sorry if I'm using language I probably.
No, feel free.
It's a podcast, right? So we're good. Like we're all forced to live in this like society that's like consistently driving us apart, and can be very, very isolating. And I think just the idea that you would find yourselves in a club for a night that's full of smoke and lights and pulsing, dance music, which is what it all boils down to. It shouldn't really matter like how you're dressed. That's just kind of irrelevant. Like, enjoy the company of the folks around you, as long as they're not being turds. In which case, feel free to not enjoy the company.
And you hit the nail on the head. Right now, we're in a state that awareness is being given to persons, the way how they dress and how they look, and I really appreciate now that persons are breaking out of that mode that you have to dress a certain way, you have to look a certain way. So at least there's some progress in that avenue.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, I know that like this like underground like dance music or goth or whatever. I mean, that word has meant so many different things over the years, but I'm not sure that it necessarily means much anymore outside of somebody that wears black clothing. Or, I don't know. I don't even know if that actually is accurate. But like this like larger dance music or underground dance music scene is just like fashion has been a part of it for a very long time, and a very important part, and the like that in and of itself, like that cultural side of this subculture is important to a lot of people, and that's cool. That's perfectly fine and reasonable, and I just don't know that like should prevent people from enjoying the music itself, which I think in a lot of ways stands on its own as being interesting and like almost forever timely. There's any number of bands that could come out tomorrow and their music would sound just as fresh as it did 30 years ago when it actually came out.
Right. And speaking about that, as a content creator, as a musician, do you hold for yourself personally the short-term goal, long-term goal thing, or everything is just playing it by ear and seeing the evolution of Child at Night and where the next step takes the project?
We absolutely set goals as a band and try and achieve them. Sometimes we fall short. Sometimes we blow our goals out of the water. We've only, like I said, we've only been doing it. Our first show was a year ago, like the 18th of July, I think. So far we've really achieved pretty much everything we've set out to do. I'm sure that was slow at some point. Maybe not. It'd be great if it didn't. We'll see. But yeah, I think there's also an element of playing it by ear. So like you can't make opportunities happen. You just have to be able to accept them when they come your way. So in that regard, we're, we do play things by ear and like try and leave ourselves open to those sorts of serendipitous happenings. Great, and all the best to you in with that regard. Enjoy the music, and really enjoy the different audio aesthetics that you have infused in Child of Night, and each track is different. Thank you. We try very hard not to write the same song over and over again. We have a lot of things that we really like. A lot of bands inspire us. A lot of events in our lives inspire us, and the breadth of things that can and do happen to us on a regular basis. Leads to a lot of different experiences, which leads to, I think, a lot of different songs. We like never set out to rewrite something that we've already done, or consistently trying to push for something interesting. But also within the context of being a lot of times like it's a 4/4 dance beat, but we try and write something that's different and interesting over top of it, like those experiences. Right. And most bands in this genre, they fall to the trap of keeping one type of sound, and one album they released 10 years ago seems the same years later, although they try to tweak it, but you can still find a distinct beat, and that's not part of the evolution. It is just the change and taking different aspects of other genres in order to change the texture of the tracks. I don't know that there's necessarily anything wrong with that, right? Like if you are a band that writes in a specific style and you do it well, I think that's fine. I mean, it's going to be whatever works for you. Bands have found a great deal of success, and a lot of people really enjoy that sort of thing. I don't think that that's what we want to do at all, but I just don't have a ton of interest in judging other people's art in the same way that I judge my own. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? Yes. As an artist, that is your painting, and that is your how do you conveying your emotions to the audience? Yeah. And
for your last couple of questions, one being your upcoming performances, what is next in store? Will it be places outside of Columbus or global probably? Well, what is in store for Child of Night?
So right now today we're playing in Columbus at No Culture with Planning for Burial, Lord Warfin, and We Demon. And then after that, we have about a month where we'll be preparing for our next tour, which is with Sacraments, an excellent band from Richmond, Virginia. If you haven't heard that, you should definitely listen. That takes us up through the Northeast and all the way over to Chicago and back. All back to Washington, D.C. It's like a circle. So we're playing some shows in markets that we haven't played in before, which will be fun, exciting. Touring globally, is obviously a goal. It's something we've spoken to some promoters and people in Europe that would like for us to come out. We just are working on the financial side of that to figure it out, because that sort of thing costs money.
With social networking comes the opportunity with crowdfunding. Hopefully that could be a method to raise funds as well.
Nothing against people that do crowdfunding. I'm always so embarrassed to ask people for that sort of thing. It would be great. But I suppose there are things that we could offer people that maybe they would be interested in buying. But generally speaking, I prefer to, I guess, just do it ourselves.
Right. The old-fashioned...
I don't know. Maybe I'm just old.
Hey, I was about to say the old-fashioned grind. Doing it the old-fashioned way.
Yeah. That's just how all of my bands have worked. The opportunities that we get and the things that we've earned by grinding.
Right.
I don't know.
And the final question here is more of an open platform. This is the part of the interview where you could just plug away social networking handles, where fans can find your music, where is it located, so on and so forth.
The best place to find us is on Instagram. We are very active there. Just @_Child of Night. We're also on Facebook. We post there, but Facebook is trash. Like most of it. We don't really do Snapchat. I'm old. I don't know what to tell you. We have a Twitter, but it's not very active. It's not a thing that we really use frequently. The best place to reach us and communicate with us is on Instagram or really via email, which is childnight666@gmail.com is our email address. We have a record coming out at the end of next month, August 24th. It's called What Remains, and it's going to be available worldwide on a whole bunch of different labels.
Great, thank you. Looking forward to that. And also, Siren is on, the singles on Spotify for those who are curious, want to hear the sounds. And there's also links in the profile to other albums for Child of Night. Thank you so much, Mr. Thompson, for your answers and for this interview.
Hey, thank you.
Music news. Queen of the Static Copper releases single.
Our final segment on trending news on industrial EBM and the witch house scene is a report on Queen of the Static Opera. This music artist, she has remained relatively under the radar for the past 4 years. Only a handful of interviews is available online dating back to 2015. Her SoundCloud profile only boasts 7 tracks during this period of 2015 till this year, 2018. Nevertheless, Queen of the Static Opera has amassed 5,401 followers on SoundCloud, the music social media platform, and Queen of the Static Opera exhibits diversity in her music range. If you go to her SoundCloud profile, which we'll be providing the link to in our podcast notes, simply visit DecayMag.com. You could really see the diverse music range with contrasting soundscapes featured in tracks such as Venus and Bruises on My Neck. So who is Queen of the Static Opera? This music artist defines her art as dark and classifies it as industrial pop. Now, Queen of the Static Opera is now under partnership with independent recording label Borderline Music and has just released her debut single Delete 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 on YouTube. The single comes off of her upcoming debut album due in January 2019 via AWAL, AWAL. Here is an excerpt from a tweet off of Queen of the Static Opera's Twitter feed. Quote, "I cannot promise Queen of the Static Opera is good or will be successful. I can promise I put my heart and soul into the songs I write for it. I put my soul into the aesthetic world I want to present. And my story comes from reality and what I experience." Unquote. That tweet was released on the 3rd of October 2018. Once again, Queen of the Static Opera releases her single Delete Delete Delete. Check it out on YouTube. Also stop by DecayMag.com for the podcast notes to this particular episode, and contained within is the link to the song, the single Delete Delete Delete, along with other resources to connect with Queen of the Static Opera. Thank you for tuning in. You're listening to DecayMag, Bondage and Circuitry Radio. Technically, this is not episode 1. We have had other episodes under Bondage and Circuitry releases as a podcast over at Mixcloud, but now we're moving that content over to one umbrella, DecayMag, and all podcasts are produced under Mega X Studios LLC. Thank you for tuning in once again. My name is Ken R2's founder for DecayMag, and you can find DecayMag across all social media platforms, DecayMag.com, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest. Remember, we are DecayMag, not the word decay or Decay Magazine for some strange reason. Yeah, or the letter D or K. We are not the fashion company Donna Karen. DecayMag. And also find our podcasts across Google Podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn. And if you have a Google Home device, just use the command OK Google, play DecayMag podcasts. This letter, all you have to do is visit DecayMag.com, DecayMag.com, and a little pop-up will ask for your email address. Simply add it and you'll be added to our newsletter and be in the know